Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I'm excited to try some new supplies in my art journal. Let's go! All right, today I'm going to do an art journal process. I don't really know what direction this is going to go, but I know I want to try using these. These are new powders, new to me from Lindy's Magicals. I picked them up this spring. Haven't gotten a chance to give them a try, and I'm super excited to use them in this art journal process. I'm sure there's going to be a few more things that make their way on this page, but I will definitely link the things that I use down below, and we'll just kind of see what happens. That's my favorite part of art journaling, just going with it and seeing what the page brings to you. So I will put you guys on fast forward. Let's go. All right, so what are these particular supplies? So this is the Lindy's Magicals. They come in a ton of different color sets, and what they are a really fine pigment powder. You can mix them into a lot of different supplies. You could mix them with water, you can mix them with paint, and they are going to add like a tint to it, and it has a little bit of a shimmer to it as well. A little bit of pigment goes a really long way, so you don't need a lot. In fact, I probably pulled out a lot in this case, but I'm going to use them with a couple of different mediums. I'm starting with water. I just want to see how they work as kind of like watercolors. And what I did, kind of wet down the page, and I decided I'm going to go with a stripe kind of look. I'm wanting to see, I don't want it to be blended perfectly. I'm wanting to see this kind of washed out look in the background, but with these rainbow colors. It was fun to play with. It was fun to see how they worked. Yes, they worked beautifully as watercolors. It would be really important, I think, when you get a supply like this to swatch it out in some different mediums so you knew what it might look like. Of course, the more pigment you add, the darker it's going to be, but they didn't necessarily turn out the color that the pigment looks to the left. So for instance, the green, when you look at just the powder, looks like a really vibrant, like limey green, but it's a much softer, more sage green once it's mixed in with water, and it actually turned out the same way when I mixed it in with acrylic paint later in this video. So something to keep in mind. It would probably be a really good idea to mix it into some different mediums just to kind of experiment with the colors. I'm wondering what it would look like with gesso. I tried white acrylic paint. I tried water. You can use this as a spray as well, putting it in a little spray bottle, mixing it in with water. You can add all kinds of stuff. There's so many possibilities, which is what makes these particular pigments a ton of fun to work with. I knew for this art journal page, I had this concept of a watercolor background and then acrylic paint on top of that. It's going to kind of come together differently than what I anticipated, but of course that's how it almost always happens with art journaling. And because I'm definitely just getting to know this supply, it was a learning process the whole time. So this is the darkest of the pigments. It is dark, but it is beautiful. The collection I have, I believe, is an autumn collection. I think it might be called Autumn Leaves. I can see how these would make gorgeous autumn colors. Of course, I'm using it in summer and wanting a little bit brighter of a feel, but we'll see how that goes. Okay. Did one layer, dried it completely. Now I'm going over the top. Again, we're still using water. I just wanted it to be a little bit more pigmented in some areas, bringing the color all the way to the edge of the page and adding a little bit more layer. And when you do that, you get a little bit more of a depth feel because you're seeing the colors mix a little bit more. Just love how it kind of comes across. So same process, just water, bigger brush this time, just to change things up and get a little look, like a different look to the strokes. And I'm, again, just building the background, kind of experimenting with the supply. And I think that's so important. It's a step we skip all of the time. I know I am guilty of it. I always want to play with my new supplies, and sometimes you just have to experiment. It'll turn out well, it won't turn out well, whatever the case is. You always learn something new every time you are working with your supplies, and if it's a brand new supply, that's definitely going to be the case. All right, dried the whole thing again. Now we're coming in with a stencil, and this is acrylic paint. This is just, you know, the cheapo acrylic paint that you can get at Michael's or Walmart, someplace like that. I'm adding white acrylic paint on top of where each of the powders are over on my extra little cutting mat over here, mixing it, and you can see it just mixes into the paint It does a really nice job of blending in. You want to make sure it's blended all the way, that you get all those little specks. And I'm just brushing it through the stencil. I did put pixie spray on the back. This is a little bit of a watered down acrylic paint. It gets messy under the stencil. It's not like this clean look, but that's okay. You can tell from the background I'm going for more of a messy feel, and that's been my vibe with art journaling recently. I like it to feel messy. I like it to feel a little bit thrown together even when it's not. Pulling that out. Ta-da! I took it. I'm going to take it, dry off the stencil, and then start layering on some of the different colors. This got a little bit tedious because I had to dry each layer off in between, and I'm super impatient when it comes to drying. I'm definitely someone that likes to craft in a fast way. Let me know in the comments, are you someone that has patience when you craft? I feel like probably because I'm making videos, that's why I get a little impatient, because I want to be able to finish the video. If I were not videotaping my process and creating videos for YouTube, I might be a little more patient and I might take breaks more in art journaling. Like work on a background, leave, come back, work on the foreground. And I think that would be a really good way to create. And I also am a big fan of having several art journals kind of out at once and working through like backgrounds on multiple pages. If you have all the paint out, like why not do that? And I really need to get a small journal that I can use kind of as a use it up journal. I heard that term from Inky Quill, or Let's Get Inky. She has 2 channels over on YouTube, and she has a use it up art journal that she kind of just keeps out. And whenever she has extra paint or things like that that she's working on, she just kind of scrapes it in or presses it into that art journal, and then goes back and kind of finishes those pages later on, which I think is such a good idea. For me, I would definitely choose a smaller journal for something like that, since it would most likely be out a lot more. And it's just, again, an opportunity to not waste supplies, because I did end up having to toss some of the paint at the end. And it's a jumping off point. It gives you some backgrounds and some cool images that you can use in different ways to kind of inspire creativity as you go. I'm repeating the scalloped pattern, the scalloped stencil that I did on the bottom, on the top, but reversing the colors so that they all kind of meet up in the middle. It's getting messier as I go, probably due to my impatience, but again, it's kind of the idea that I'm going for. I like the messy. I like the acrylic paint over watercolor. Like that's my jam. I really think that is such a cool look and something I want to do a lot more of as I'm working in this art journal. I think it's just a neat, I don't know, depth might be the wrong word. I just like what it looks like on the page. I find it very engaging to see the different mediums together in one. So I'm super pumped about how this one came out. At this point, I felt like I wanted the scallops to kind of come out a little bit more, so I'm pulling a paintbrush out and trying to imitate that scallop look with the different colors, just bringing it out pretty organically, kind of randomly from where those patterns already are. I'll do it on the top and the bottom just to, like I said, I didn't want to be this harsh line. I wanted it to seem like it was like, I don't know, coming together, almost like plants. I don't know. It was just fun to play with, and I loved bringing the design out. And at this point, I really didn't even know where I was going to go with this page. I was just enjoying the patterns and the colors and the supplies, and probably would have been perfectly happy just kind of leaving it like that. There's kind of a harsh edge over on the right hand side where that kind of reddish rose color ends a little. See right there, I'm going to try to soften it up, but ends a little funky, which is what eventually leads me to decide I need to add a focal point. This is the Dina Wakley Collage Collective. Some great art here from Dina Wakley. I'm looking for a piece. This girl is perfect. I'm going to cut her out, and she's going to become my focal piece. I'm just trying to figure out how I can fit her on the page. It's a big image, and I want both of her eyes on the page because I think they are gorgeous. I love that she is a pop of white on the page, but also still has some color, and I'll work to kind of integrate her a little bit more, which is really important. When you are using collage pieces, you want to see how you can integrate them onto your page, especially when you have other mediums. You don't just want to plop them on top. Make them have a little bit more interest. What I'm going to do right here, scraping white paint. You guys know I love a good paint scraping time, and it brings a little bit of that white, that brightness over to the left-hand side of the page. which will be nice because it was a really stark white over on the right hand side, and I wanted to make sure that you kind of brought that color across the page. Yes, I'm scraping over the stencils. Like I said, messy is my jam right now. Love the vertical lines, love that feel. She is gonna go right over here. I'm just gonna use Tombow adhesive to get her down. I'm gonna be really generous with it though, because it is going on top of this acrylic paint watercolor page, and I wanna make sure it sticks really well. I probably should have used the liquid adhesive. That's okay. It'll hold up fine. Let's get her on the page. Super cute. Love, love, love. And then what I'm going to do to incorporate her a little bit more, doing a little bit of paint scraping and then bringing that stencil over to the paper image. So layered stencil right here. Let's bring in a little bit more color over here, layering it over the top. That's always my tip for incorporating these types of images. I love using these from Dina Wakley, from Jane Davenport, just because I really appreciate their art and want to celebrate it on my page. But as I bring them in, layering your stenciling, layering your mediums over the top so that it's not quite the harsh line. It feels like a cohesive piece altogether. See, that kind of breaks up that line even more. And then the last thing I'm going to do, let's add a little bit more color here because that's kind of an awkward space. The last thing I'm going to do is pull out some paint pens to highlight some of those hairlines that are on there and extend them out from where the collage piece is. All right, I am loving my Sharpie paint pens. I picked them up a while ago and have been using them in art journaling. Huge fan of the Sharpie paint pens. They're working really well except for the white. The white isn't really as opaque as I would like it to be. If you have a favorite white paint pen, can you let me know what it is down below? Because I'm always in search of one. This one just didn't. The black, look how beautiful it is. I'm just tracing some of the lines that are on the page and then extending them out so that it brings it in a little bit more, bringing in a little bit more darkness around her eyes, and we'll add a little highlight to those eyes. Don't worry, I'm not just going to leave them black circles later. And I'm going to bring in blue as well. After I do the blue and the black, I end up deciding that I want to bring in some of the colors of the paint that I've been using, which works out well because I still have little tidbits over there left on my cutting board. So I'll just pick a smaller paintbrush. See, the white just isn't. I tried it, it's just not working as well. I do bring it into the eyes and it works well there. But instead of white, after I tried a couple times, what I'm going to do is bring in a smaller paintbrush and use some of the paint that I have left over here on the side to trace over some of the lines that have colors that don't necessarily get pulled into the watercolor background. So the pinks will soften that up a little bit. There's an orange in this particular drawing that I want to soften up with one of the colors on the other side. And again, bringing those colors together makes it feel like one big cohesive piece, and not that I just plunked that on there. It kind of brings it all together in one. Super cute, loving how that comes out. And then of course I need to add a little bit of a highlight to her eyes just so they don't look kind of, I don't know, just dead looking there. So always want to remember to add that in. Filling that in, yes, super cute. I love this. It felt so good to art journal. Last thing I'm going to do after I add that little bit of a highlight is add in the writing. So I chose the phrase "follow that gaze" because I love that she's kind of looking off, and I love that she's looking almost into this gorgeous like watercolor world in the background. I found it really inspiring. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know what you think of this art journaling entry down in the comment box below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button so you can know when I post new videos. I do want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. Thank you all so much for your support. We're having a fabulous time. There's all kinds of extra perks, extra content, a lot of fun things happening on Patreon. So if you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to click the link down in the description box to see what Patreon is all about. All right, I hope that you have a fabulous day. And as always, keep it creative.